Okay, hello everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? Last week, last Saturday, when we did our stream on New Year's Day, we started to look at my new favorite YouTuber, John Doyle. John Doyle, for those of you who don't know, is a Christian Dominionist and a pretty funny one at that. And when I say funny, I really mean incredibly wrong about everything and also disturbing and horrible. If someone like him were to ever actually get into power, it would be a nightmare for everybody. Right. But before we get into that, um because I think we're going to take this stream and just dedicate it to watching the rest of the video that we first started watching, which was called The Very Real Link Between Christianity and Conservatism. So that's what we're going to be spending this, hour, 2 hours or so going over. Before we do that, though, let's take a look at where we're at with our dragons. So you can see that dragon number one is actually looking pretty good. The red one, maybe might do a little bit more in the way of adding some shadows and stuff to it later, maybe some more highlights. Dragon number two is still looking a little flat, so we're going to be working on him today. And as before, I'm still using new software, so if I'm fiddling around and stuff and it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, it's because I don't. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Let's turn on our laptop. So this is The Very Real Link Between Christianity and Conservatism. Since we only got like 45 seconds into it last time, I think I'm just going to start the whole thing over. So but before we do that, I do want to show you guys something. Take a look at John Doyle's icon here. Right, take a look at this guy's, let me just make this really big. Look at this guy's icon here. It's like, can I make that bigger? I don't know if I can make that actually bigger. Um, Open image, well, yeah, there we go. There's his channel icon. Yeah, just a little neck beardy there. I'm liking the trilby. Anyway, so yeah, let's get back to that. Pause. Don't start yet. And let's make this super big. And let's go ahead and as soon as this guy feels like playing, let's make that smaller. Come on, start over.
What's the
Play.
significant difference
All
between what Congress and the federal government have done and what an official established religion would do? They have their holidays.
Why are you pausing? What the hell? Okay, wait. Let's just start this whole thing over here because something is obviously not right. Refresh, refresh, refresh.
What's the significant
There we go.
difference between what
Okay, so we're just going to start the entire thing over. I don't know why that was acting funky like that. Goddamn YouTube, gotta screw me up. Here we go. Here is the very real link between Christianity and conservatism.
If you've spent more than 5 minutes operating in the realm of American politics, and in particular right-wing American politics, then you've probably heard something to the effect of, America was built upon Christian values. Christian values are what made America great, what made America exceptional. And this is true. But because we're lazy and we enjoy the temporary perceived comforts of a secular society, we also think that this country was built upon religious freedom or something, which isn't true. That's, of course, what they tell you in public school to justify the promotion of the religions of the state.
Yeah, so we did kind of touch on this a little last time, but I don't want to let it go without saying anything, you know. So, the country was not founded on religious principles at all. The United States was not founded on Christian principles. The founding fathers were actually a very specific kind of Christian. They were not what you would call today a right wing evangelical Christian. They were not modern Christians, right? Or even, just anything remotely close to what we would recognize. The founding fathers were actually deists. So, what a deist is they believe that there is a God, right? But that the human mind is the only thing that we can rely on for, you know, I guess solving political and social problems. They didn't believe in miracles at all, right? They didn't believe in what you would say is a um, personal relationship with Jesus or something like that. That was not something that the founding fathers believed in at all in the slightest. Deism means that a supreme being creates the universe and then just sort of nopes out afterwards and bails, and that's it, and that's really the only that's what they believed. So they didn't believe that, God had a plan for anybody. Divine providence is what they call that, right? Um, and the reason for this was, this is like what they pretty much encoded into the Constitution. You know, so he's going to talk about the separation of church and state here in a little bit, and it's easy. It's um, easy to kind of like take what the Christian Dominionist position is on face value when you don't actually know the history of what the founding fathers actually believed and why they believed it and why they, specifically wrote the Constitution in order to exclude religion from politics. Right. So let's move on here.
Satanism, atheism, progressivism, etc. Just like in the latter half of the 20th century, they use these ideas of free speech and free expression.
Okay, we can't let that go either. All right, let's rewind that real fast, right? Because he just basically claimed the United States supports Satanism. So let's listen to that one more time.
Very perceived comforts of a secular society. We also think that this country was built upon religious freedom or something, which isn't true. That's, of course, what they tell you in public school to justify the promotion of the religions of the state. Satanism, atheism, progressivism, etc.
Yeah. So in real life, none of those are religions that are official state religions. The United States does not have an official state religion. Um, but you'll notice there that he equated Satanism with progressivism, right? With atheism. That is complete and total BS. Complete bullshit of the highest order, right? Those things are not religions, right? I mean, atheism is the lack of a religion. Okay. Now, I know there are people out there who do call it a religion, and even people who are atheists who will say atheism is my religion. But that is what the definition of atheism is. The definition of atheism means you have a lack of belief, not that you believe in any certain dogma, in any certain, in any certain codified, set of tenets, anything like that, like an actual religion has. No, there are all kinds of atheists. There are atheists who are not, secularists. Like there are atheists who out there who don't believe in a god who are also not rationalists, is what I meant to say. For some reason, like they don't believe in a god, but they still believe in things like magic and shit like that. That's actually a thing, right? So it's like, no, there are atheists out there who don't believe in a god, but they believe in all kinds of other ridiculous, unprovable things like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So it really has nothing to do with each other. But the reason why this guy is saying that is because that is sort of the dominionist, um, far right wing, radical Christian like talking point that everything which is not 100% founded in biblical, like, you know, um, founded but in the Bible is Satanism, right? According to dominionist thought, not just dominionist thought, but just sort of conservative evangelical, um, you know, uh, Christ fascists, right? I guess is what you would say, that like Christian fascist sort of like dominionist thought. According to these people, everything is Satanism. So they call Hinduism Satanism. They call other types of Christianity that they don't believe with Satanism. Like, for example, Mormons, right? They think Mormonism is run by Satan. Like, I'm not kidding. This is actually, you know, So this is when he says, is, yeah, the state is like, propping up these religions. It's really there's no truth to that whatsoever, and it's really just sort of like kind of like a dog whistle to the far right wing Christianity, you know, that Satan is the prince of this world or whatever. So it's complete bullshit, is what I'm trying to say. Moving on.
Just like, in the latter half of the 20th century, they use these ideas of free speech and free expression, man, to promote communism and degeneracy throughout the culture. Why would you ever take these people at their word?
Yeah, and we kind of commented on this a little bit too, but we can't let these things go, man. You know, look at what he just said right there. Look at what he just said. Free speech, used for to promote communism, right? Used to promote perversion, stuff like that, right? So what's the implication there? What's the implication? What is he trying to say exactly? He's trying to say that free speech is bad. He's trying to say that free speech should not be allowed, right? And that so what does that mean when the free speech is not allowed? Right. So he doesn't want people to have free speech because they'll use it to promote political ideas and religions that he doesn't like. Right. So, what's basically the underpinning of that statement is saying that, well, we should not allow people to have free speech, according to this guy. You should not be allowed to say the things you want. Right. What does free speech actually mean? It means that the state, right, the government, is not allowed to dictate what you can and can't say and what you can and can't believe when it comes, because that's the reason why the First Amendment has you know provisions for a free press as well as freedom of religion in the same clause, right, in the same amendment. That's why they bundle those together, because they're kind of linked together, exonerably linked, right? You can't have freedom of religion without freedom of speech. Okay, they go hand in hand, right? See, we got to remember that back in the 16th and 17th and 18th centuries, right, when the founding, when the United States was just sort of in its larval stages. We were still the 13 colonies and all that stuff before the revolution, right? You know, countries back then very much did dictate what people believed. You know, they very much did dictate what speech was and wasn't allowed. And you could go to prison for sedition, for speaking out against the king in England, for example, right? For saying the wrong shit, right? For advocating, unpopular ideas, right? In the Middle Ages, the church would hang people and burn people at the stake for heresy if they said things like, for example, the Earth rotated around the sun, for example, like Galileo, shit like that, right? If you took a stance that was contrary to Christian dogma, you could be excommunicated and if you were excommunicated, that was like the lightest sentence you could get, and then what would happen then? Nobody would do business with you. You'd be kicked out of your town. You'd be basically an outcast, right? You wouldn't be able to buy food. You wouldn't be able to, people would like throw fucking tomatoes and shit at you as you walk down the street. And that is just, for if you're, that's like the lightest punishment that you could get. More often than not, people were beaten and tortured and persecuted, you know, entire like sects, you had like, for example, the Cathars in France were just wiped out during the Middle Ages. They would basically end up killing you if you were a heretic, right? This is the type of world that the founding fathers came from. And this is why they very wisely decided to separate church and state, because they didn't want the United States to have the ability to dictate what you do and don't believe and what you are and aren't allowed to say. They were very, very wisely coded that into our, founding documents. And they were among the first, if not the first. I don't know offhand if the United States were actually the first country to ever actually like guarantee that right, but it was definitely a very novel thing back in the day there. The great American experiment is what they used to call it. This guy wants to take that shit away from you. Why? Because, freedom of speech, allows people to talk about communism, right? And allows them to be anti-Christian, right? And he can't have that because, according to his theology, right, the Christians should be in charge of everything. I'm going into this mostly blind, but I guarantee you that's going to come up again and again and again. Right? This theme of how non that the law, the Constitution, only applies to Christians, right? And that it um, that kind of thing, and non-Christians don't have rights. I guarantee it. He's gonna at some point he's gonna either say or imply that non-Christians don't have rights in the United States. Just watch, right? And I haven't even watched all the way through it. I only watched up to where we left off last week. I just guarantee you this is gonna fucking happen. Hey, thank you for joining Zorine Malvina. Um, Thanks for joining. I don't understand what you're saying, but that's okay. Let's move on here, right? Okay, am I even streaming? I think I am. I don't know. Well, anyway, moving on.
But yeah, so they tell you that the founding fathers were refugees fleeing religious persecution, just like the Muslims are now. Yeah, well, that would be like saying people who wanted to go to Five Guys instead of In-N-Out were seeking dietary freedom. They're still eating burgers, bro. Virtually every European American.
Yeah, I still don't know what that means. I thought about that, what he just said, because, what the fuck is he talking about? I really don't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not intelligent enough to understand what that analogy is. Like, I'm trying to think, like, I mean, is he comparing religion to choice of restaurant? Is he saying that your religion is still the kind of food that you're eating, and then somehow what? Like, does that mean that Christians don't eat hamburgers in this analogy? Like, do Christians eat the tacos? Like, I really don't get it. It really doesn't make sense to me at all, what he just said right there. And I don't know, man. It's kind of like this dude's this dude's strategy is to just sort of like shovel as much bullshit at you as he can like possibly like can. Like I said before, he's sort of like Ben Shapiro. He just sort of s- says a bunch of crap really fast. It makes it kind of sound like he's intelligent, but if you actually examine any of it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like that right there. Like it didn't make any sense at all. I don't know, that sort of Gish Gallop style of just rapid fire bullshittery is what's going on here. All right, moving on.
Identified as a Christian in 1776, except for a couple thousand Jews, bro. When they say that the Constitution was written for a religious people and that it wouldn't function with any other population, they were talking about Christians, bro. It never would have occurred to them that they'd be dealing with all this other nonsense in their country, bro. But
Yeah, that also doesn't matter. All of that stuff. So what did you just say right there, right? He just said that everybody back then was a Christian and they didn't ever thought that they would have non-Christians in their country. Why does that matter? Why does it matter? You know, so just because is he trying to say that since they were Christians, the founding fathers, which they weren't even really the same kind of Christian that he was, but he is, but whatever. But since they were, does that mean that the laws they drafted only apply to other Christians? Is that how that works? So does that mean if I go to say Saudi Arabia, right? And their laws were drafted with, Muslims in mind. Does that mean none of their laws apply to me? So I could just do whatever I want? Can I just run around like, stealing cars and like graffitiing on things and, urinating on like, the floor and shit like that? Farting on people's breakfast, that kind of thing. Can I just run around being a complete hooligan? And then when they arrest me, I could just be like, hey, your law doesn't apply to me, man, because I'm Christian and your laws were written for Muslims. Bullshit. It doesn't work like that, right? That's dumb. That's dumb as hell. That's really stupid and idiotic and makes zero sense whatsoever, right? I mean, it's like you know what does apply like that? Religious rules. You know, the tenets of one's religion don't apply to people who don't belong to that religion, right? Laws are not the same thing as, commandments. Okay. you know, uh, Not that long ago, Catholics didn't eat fish on, they didn't eat meat on Fridays at all. That kind of thing. It's like, you could go to hell, right, for like, eating meat on a Friday, or if you were Jewish, you could like, get stoned to death for working on the Sabbath, shit like that, right? Those are what commandments are. Like laws are actually like, set up through secular authority and backed up by the actual secular authority themselves and not the deity. So everybody has to obey them. That's how laws are supposed to fucking work. See, it just doesn't make any sense. Like that's the thing. If you were to just hear him say that, and if you didn't pause and take the time to examine that, you might actually think that there was some merit to it. But in real life, it makes zero fucking sense. Moving on here.
But we fumbled for a century or so, and so now we have to figure this out. Oh, but the First Amendment says that freedom of religion and separation of church and state. No, it doesn't actually. First of all, separation of church and state is not a real thing. That's not written anywhere in any of the founding documents of this country. That is in reference to a letter that Thomas Jefferson penned in the early 1800s, but that's about it.
Yeah, okay. So this is an attack that Christians and Dominionists and shit like that often like to take, where they claim that okay, well, it doesn't actually say in the Constitution that there's a separation of church and state, right? Which is of course bullshit. Okay, it says it right there in the very First Amendment, all right. But let's give a little bit of background to you know where this idea of the separation of church and state actually came from. Okay. Because, he's right. The people back then in the, 18th century very much were religious people. The founding fathers were actually religious people, Um, and yeah, they were, right? So it kind of came about, not just immediately, but through steps, right? So this letter that he's talking about with the origin of the term the separation of church and state, this is Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists, is where that comes from, right? And there's a specific quote that I pulled from there, which this is where the first mention of a wall between church and state in any of the writings of the founding fathers actually comes from. Okay, and let me just read this here for you now. Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other than his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. So you notice he's quoting the First Amendment there, right? He's basically saying, hey, this is the First Amendment, and this is what it actually means. It means that church and state are separate. This is Thomas Jefferson. You can't get more founding fathery than fucking Thomas Jefferson, right? This concept of a separation of church and state, of course, predates the Constitution. It was in the Americas first enacted into law in 1779 in the state of Virginia, right? Um, with the Virginia State of Religious Freedom. Sorry, the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, right? Which Thomas Jefferson actually wrote this. So we're going to open that up. And this is the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, right? This is the text of the statute. I'm not going to read this entire thing because it's pretty long, right? But it is, let me just go ahead and put this down into the chat down here so you guys can check it out on your own. It pretty much lays out, hey, how's it going, Lusa Hedgehog? Thanks for joining, man. It pretty much lays out, what the separation between church and state actually is. Okay? You know, so let me just read this last paragraph here. Okay? Because up through here, he's kind of talking about, all the stuff that we can't do, blah, 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 blah. The state should not be allowed to force anybody to worship or give money to any church, anything like that. Let's read the final paragraph here. Be it enacted by General Assembly that no man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced, restrained, molested, or burdened in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain in their opinions in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capabilities. Right. Capacities. Sorry. Not capabilities, capacities. And though we well know that this assembly enacted by the people for the ordinary purposes of legislation only have no power to restrain the acts of seceding assemblies constituted with powers equal to our own, and that therefore to declare this act irrevocable would be no effect in law, yet we are free to declare and do declare that the rights hereby asserted are of the natural rights of mankind, and that if any act shall be hereafter passed to repeal the present or to narrow its operation, such act will be an infringement of natural right, i.e., the state and religion are separate. So that's there. I recommend reading through that because it kind of lays out exactly the opposite of what this douchebag here is saying, right? So when the Constitution actually came around a few years later in 1787, right, the first mention of God or religion in the Constitution comes from Article 6. Article 6 is, of course, the article which forbids a religious test for office, right? Which is also a new thing because back in the day, there, like say for in England and in France, for example, if you weren't the right religion, you basically would get kicked out of government, right? Because the state dictated what you believed. Um, France was a Catholic country. England was with the Church of England and had plenty of religious strife going on with Catholics in England as well, right? And they had a long history of these sorts of problems, right? Well, in the United States, our founding fathers decided that they weren't going to do any of that shit. They weren't going to allow any of that to happen, and this is why they specifically wrote into the Constitution that you could not require any employee or officer or anyone holding a position of power in the United States government to belong to a certain religion or any religion at all, right? The First Amendment was actually added later um, in 1797. That's when because yeah, I know it's kind of like the Bill of Rights wasn't originally part of the original Constitution, right? But it was added later in 1797, and the First Amendment, of course, says Congress shall enact no law, establishing the religion or the prohibiting the free worship thereof or whatever the fuck it says. I can't remember exactly the exact text of the First Amendment, but I'm sure you're all familiar with it, right? Later on, I did sort of mention this a little bit also, but a few years later, after the First Amendment was added, we had the Treaty of Tripoli, right? Treaty of Tripoli was negotiated by George Washington. So you want to talk about founding fathers, he is the founding father, George Washington, right? And signed into law by John Adams. Okay. And we're going to look up, let's look up here, Treaty of Tripoli, because it's interesting to read, right? Treaty of Tripoli. Okay. I probably should have looked all this stuff up before I actually started the stream. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Where's the actual text of the Treaty of Tripoli? Hang on one second. Hang on a second, guys. Give me 1 second. Tripoli. And Article 7. Here it is. Okay. Talking about the relevant article in the Treaty of Tripoli is Article 11, because the Treaty of Tripoli was all about how, it's a peace treaty because there were pirates that were raiding American merchant vessels and shit like that, blah, 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 blah. That stuff doesn't really matter too much to us nowadays, right? But it is often cited when it comes to discussions of, the separation of church and state, right? This is Article 11 is the reason why. So let me read it to you guys. What this is now, this is the very first treaty that the United States ever put in, right? When all of the founding fathers who actually signed the Constitution, right, were still very much involved in government. Okay. Article 11. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it is in itself, as it has in itself no character of and if, no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslimen, which they mean, Muslims, right? That's what they used to call them, Muslimen. And as the state, and as the said states never have entered into any war or any act of hostility against any Mahatman nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. So, I don't know if you heard that, the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, says it right there. This is language that George Washington himself put into the very first treaty that the United States ever actually negotiated. So, yeah, that notion that, we were founded on Christian, you know, um, we were founded to be a Christian nation on Christian principles for Christians, by Christians, and only for Christians is complete and total BS, bullshit of the highest order. And the people who actually signed all the documents and created the country to begin with is where we get the evidence for this from. So, long story short, John Doyle here is completely 100% full of shit and has no idea what the hell he's talking about. Let's move on.
Secondly, properly understood in terms of how our country was established, it is a separation of church from state, which means that the intent was to prevent the state from interfering with the practice of religion, specifically Christianity.
The other way around as well. Yeah, he's correct. It was that. It was also to prevent religion from interfering in the affairs of state, because that was very much a thing back in the day, right? In Europe, right, back in the Middle Ages, all the way up until the Renaissance, a lot of the countries were essentially just sort of vassal states for the church, right? And you know, it was very yeah. So this is sort of exactly the reason why they put all this in there in the first place, right? It goes definitely the other way around. And that's why even today, churches don't pay taxes, right? Churches are also not supposed to endorse political candidates, even though they do. That is a law that needs to be enforced. It hasn't been enforced in a long time, right? And it's sort of just one of those things where the federal government just turns its back and looks the other way, mainly because of right-wing conservative Republicans who use Christians as their voting base, right? That's the reason why. Which is complete and total bullshit. Shouldn't be allowed, and it's wrong. But that's why. If the laws were actually obeyed, right, churches would be forced to stay out of politics and could lose their tax exempt status for doing half of the shit that they do nowadays. So let's move on.
Which is why the First Amendment says that Congress can't establish a religion, except that it has, hasn't it? This is not exactly a fresh take.
No, it has not. So you can't even one instance of that. You can't let it go, right? Because that's once again somebody at home is gonna just like I said, it just sort of has a way like of firing bullshit into your brain, and then pretty soon you just get tired of trying to debunk it, right? This sort of style, this rapid fire gish gallop style of just bullshit overload. It makes you tired. It makes you just sort of like start letting it go, and then before you know it, you're allowing him to frame the argument. That's kind of what they do, right? Can't be allowed. No. Every time you hear it, we're gonna stop and we're gonna say no, right? So sorry, John Doyle, you're full of shit. Moving on.
But what's the significant difference between what Congress and the federal government have done and what an official established religion would do? They have their holidays, they have their saints, their martyrs, they have their myths, their narratives, they have their rituals and sacrifices, they have their slogans, prayers.
All right. What's the difference between what Congress has done and what an actual religion would do? Hmm. Well, a religion would burn people at the stake for not believing in the same God that they believe in. That's what a religion would do. A religion would excommunicate people for thinking the wrong thing, right? For saying the wrong thing, for believing the wrong thing, right? That's what religions used to do, right? A religion would execute somebody for being gay. This is sort of what religions do even today, in the Middle East, something like that, Taliban throwing gay people off of buildings, stuff like that, right? Um, these are all things that religions very much would do and have done in the past and even still do today, right? Is the United States Congress doing that? When was the last time somebody got thrown off a building for being gay by the government in the United States? When was the last time that somebody like got burned at the stake for being a witch in the United States? When has that happened? Hmm. By the government? When have the police come and arrested somebody for witchcraft in the United States? You know, Stuff like that does happen in Saudi Arabia, for example. You can get beheaded in Saudi Arabia for practicing witchcraft, right? For being a pagan, for doing stuff like Wicca. You can be beheaded in Saudi Arabia. That's what a country without freedom of speech and without freedom of religion actually looks like, right? Can you imagine what would happen if they tried to do that here? Right? I mean, I'm pretty sure John Doyle would be super happy about it if he could go around and start burning witches and beheading pagans and shit like that. I'm sure that would just make his fucking day, right? So, yeah. And let's just sort of rewind this a little bit because you notice here when he's saying these things, he's posting these pictures. Let's look at these pictures that he's
Between
saying
what
here.
Congress and the federal government
Right.
have done
Look
and
at this
what an
shit.
official established religion would do. They have their holidays.
By the way, who are you? I noticed there's some like Russian people. How you guys doing? Are those like bots? I think those are bots, right? Dynacat, hey, thanks for joining, man. Like these two Russian guys, I think they're bots. I don't know, man. If you Russian dudes in the chat, if you're not bots, let me know. But I don't know, please. I don't know where you came from. Say something that makes me think that you're not a bot. Anyway, lose a hedgehog, Dynacat, thanks for joining, guys. Appreciate that.
They have their saints, their martyrs.
They're saints. Why did he post that? This is a saint. This is actually a Christian image right here, is it not? Black Jesus. That's a funny thing that he chose. And he's right now comparing the government to a religion. Funny that he would choose an image of black Jesus like that, right? That is very much a thing, by the way. In Africa and stuff like that, when you have depictions of Jesus, he's often depicted as a black person. The same way that if you go to South Korea, South Korea has a very large Christian population. Depictions of Jesus are usually as an Asian person. That's just sort of how religion works. People like to see themselves in their God, right? So why specifically did he choose that? Why didn't he choose a picture of Asian Jesus or a picture of just Jesus from, say, ancient Roman times or something, you know. So that's another thing. Like people don't understand this stuff, right? This image of Jesus that we have of, this image of Jesus that we have of like a guy with a huge beard and all that, that's not necessarily how he always was depicted, right? Let me see. Early depictions of. Right. So let me see if I can find the pictures, the earliest depictions of Jesus. Let's see. The very, very early depictions of Jesus showed him without a beard. It was stuff like, let's say, early pictures was stuff like this, right? I don't know if you can actually see that. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little. Zooming in, here we go. The Good Shepherd. Okay. Let me see if I can find that, a bigger picture of that. But you see this picture right here? This is probably the earliest depiction of Jesus Christ as the shepherd, the Good Shepherd, with a ram across his shoulders. And this actually is pulled from, uh, here's another one. That might be a little better to see. Here we go. There's another one right here, right? Very early depiction of Jesus Christ. No beard, no hair, right? All that stuff. So what people see as, oh well, that's the wrong. Wait, did I just turn that off? Okay, good. What people see as the divine, that it changes over the centuries. And I don't know, I just think, why did he choose this right here of a black Jesus and a black Mary? I don't know. Maybe that says something about John Doyle here.
Martyrs, they have their myths, their narratives.
Their myths and their narratives. What now? Let's see. Here's a myth. After decades, Congress votes to make, oh wait, Juneteenth
Their
a federal
saints, their
holiday.
martyrs. They have
Here's a myth. Antifa shooter Michael Rienal had loaded gun in pocket during deadly arrest. Why is that a myth exactly? Is he trying to say Antifa is a myth? You know? Is he trying to say that Michael Rienal was innocent? Wow. I'm surprised if that's what he's trying to say. I'm surprised by that. Right?
have their myths, their narratives.
Their narratives. A reckoning of systemic racism in U.S. history is long overdue. That's a myth and a narrative. Okay. That kind of coupled with the image of Black Jesus there, starting to tell a story about, John Doyle here, isn't it? Maybe John Doyle's got a little bit going on, a little bit of problems with black people here. He seems to not like them. I don't know.
They have their rituals and sacrifices.
Their rituals. What was that ritual? What was that ritual? Oh, that's somebody getting vaccinated, right? Somebody getting vaccinated is a ritual to this guy. Okay, so he's a fucking anti-vaxxer. Jesus. Let's make this full screen. Okay, that says a lot. So racist, dominionist, and an anti-vaxxer. Okay.
Sacrifices.
Ah, of course, abortion is a sacrifice. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can't forget that he thinks this is all part of satanic ritual and shit like that. You know, can't forget that, folks. Obviously, Satan is making women go out and purposely get pregnant so that they can, abort children. So I don't know what the demons can go and make baby back ribs out of them or some shit. Who knows?
They have their slogans, prayers.
Their slogans. Uh huh.
Even like it's all there.
What did that last thing say? Slogans and
But this
prayers.
is also
Let's go back just a little bit. Little bit.
Congress and the federal government have done. But this is also clear to me now that
Come on. I want to
they
see
have
that.
their rituals and sacrifices. They have their slogans, prayers.
Democrat lawmakers gender inclusive amen and a woman congressional prayer causes stir. What the fuck is this? Oh, so somebody said amen and a woman. That sounds like bullshit to me. I bet you a bazillion dollars that comes from some bullshit website like fucking Natural News or like One America Network or some shit like that, and it's like I and first off, Democrat lawmakers, so it's probably like some city clerk somewhere in like the middle of New Hampshire or some shit like that, and that no one's ever fucking heard of. I guarantee it. We'll look this up later. I'm not going to waste time looking that up right now, but this is the kind of, you know what this is? This headline right here, this is basically comes from outrage posting. This is what it is. So people find ridiculous headlines like this, on the right wing and basically post it around in social media so that they can all have their 2 minutes hate over it. That's definitely what's going on here. And I'm not saying that people on the left don't do this also, because we do, but when people on the left do this sort of, thing, it's usually something that isn't completely and totally useless and ridiculous. It's usually because, like, say, the president just did something like tried to steal an election, or like, the congressman from Florida just like got accused of fucking child sex trafficking or some shit like that. Usually it's something that's a little more important than like, oh, somebody said a woman. See, here you go, right? This is a perfect example of why we shouldn't have religion mixed with politics, right? Why religion should not be mixed with the government. Because here's a person that believes something that John Doyle doesn't, right? Here's a person that believes in a religion, a very religious person. They're praying, right? Um, you know, praying. I'm assuming they're praying in some way that has to do with an official capacity of the government. Maybe it's like the opening prayer to state house congress session or some shit like that, and they're praying in a way that John Doyle doesn't like. Well, why is that bad, right? I mean, he says that there is no separation of church and state. If that's the case, then people that are in the government should be allowed to express their religion. Isn't that true? Isn't that consistent with what John Doyle is saying? No, it isn't. You know why? Because John Doyle doesn't actually believe that. He wants people to believe in the exact same form of Christianity that he believes in. And everybody who doesn't is obviously being misled by Satan, right? So who's to say what's the proper version of Christianity? What's the approved version of Christianity, right? Do we get to vote on that? Do we all get together, have a big election to say, okay, this is the official version of Christianity that the United States government will allow? No, we don't get to do that. You know who gets to say what that should be, right? What everybody gets to believe in. You know who gets to say that? John fucking Doyle does. That's what he wants. Okay, just keep that in mind, folks. Everything this guy stands for is antithetical to what the United States actually is, right? To what the ideals of the United States are, right? Especially the ideals of the founding fathers. Okay, this is 100% true, right? If John Adams and George Washington and John Hancock and James Madison and all those people were here today watching this video, pretty sure they wouldn't have very nice things to say about John Doyle or his slanderous ideas about the founding fathers. Moving on here.
Even like it's all there. And truly, I don't mean to come off as disrespectful to the non-Christians in the audience, but this is all.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I don't mean to come off as unrespectful. Of course you fucking do. He doesn't give a shit about non-Christians, right? I mean, he just spent the last, admittedly only 2 minutes, telling how everybody who wasn't a Christian doesn't have rights, and how the founding fathers, never intended all the laws that they crafted to apply to them, right? This is what he just said. He just said that whole thing where he just said bro like 7 times. Is that not what he said? Am I misinterpreting John Doyle here? Am I just like completely talking out of my ass and he's like really saying something different? I don't think so. Moving on.
Also clear to me now that I think it would actually be more disrespectful to you if I were to try to dress it up or sugarcoat it. So, at the very least, I am honest, if perhaps off putting. And there's a couple quotes that I think work well here. I can't remember to whom exactly they're attributed, but the first one is those who think religion and politics aren't linked understand neither. And this is true, and we'll explain why as we continue. But I want you to think about that as well as this one, which you
Yeah, that's meaningless. What he just said, what he just said is meaningless. You know, it is. Okay. Those who don't understand religion or politics, understand neither, right? Or to those who think religion and politics aren't linked, understand neither. That has nothing to do with anything at all. That, you know, how does that change or challenge or, you know, anything that has to do with the separation of church and state or even the subject that we're talking about? It doesn't at all. It's bullshit. It's bullshit that he's gish galloping at us to make him sound intelligent when he's not intelligent and when his argument would fall apart under the smallest, most minute amount of fucking scrutiny. That's the Ben Shapiro technique. That's what this guy's doing.
you can probably relate to as someone who knows about politics, who understands what's going on, where we're headed, and you talk to your friends and family who just don't get it and you feel like you're going crazy, right?
Yeah, let's listen to that one more time. All right, one more time.
Off-putting. And there's a couple quotes that I think work well here. I can't remember to whom exactly they're attributed, but the first one is those who think religion and politics aren't linked understand neither. And this is true, and we'll explain why as we continue, but I want you to think about that as well as this one, which you can probably relate to as someone who knows about politics, who understands what's going on, where we're headed, and you talk to your friends and family who just don't get it and you feel like you're going crazy, right?
Okay, okay. He was kissing the audience ass right there. That's what he just did. He was just kissing the audience ass saying, "Oh, you as the audience are super intelligent. Why? Because you're listening to me." That's a technique that speech writers give in order to make the audience feel inclusive, you know? Friends, Romans, countrymen, right? When you open a speech like that, you know, it makes the audience feel like, you're on equal footing with the speaker, that you're not actually like there listening to an authority, but that you're listening instead to an equal. And so that's what he basically just said. Oh, you, as part of my audience here, know more about politics than your friends. And when they say that you're full of shit and you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, it gets frustrating. But don't worry, you are in fact super duper smart, and the reason you're so smart is because you're listening to me. That's basically what he just said right there. Once again, it's kind of, these are very like transparent and bad debate tactics, and they're it's basically just filler. It's filler when your argument really has nothing to stand on, right? When you know what you're saying is bullshit, so you have to fill it with a bunch of like, you know, baloney in order to kind of like trick people into thinking that you're correct. That's what it is. Moving on.
Right? Like you almost just want to shake them. Like, why don't you get it? Listen to me, damn it. Like they just won't wake up. Well, it's the same thing with Christianity. It's that old saying, don't ever discuss religion and politics. It's impolite. It's like, what else would you talk about? Like once you get it, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you can't.
Hmm. Is this guy like leading a cult or something? Because that's the kind of language that he's using. It's like cult leader language, right? Like once you get it, you can't unsee it. Right? Seriously, that's what he's kind of doing. He's sort of just like stroking his audience's ego, right? Sort of like that same kind of like baseless affirmation that you get from religious. I guess that makes sense, seeing how he's a religious person, that he would throw a little bit of preaching into his videos here. So I guess that's really no surprise, right? We're probably gonna the video. I bet you $1 million by the end of this sort of will most likely devolve into a sermon of some kind. If it gets that bad, we'll just turn it off. Anyway, what time is it, folks? Shit, what time is it anyway? Fuck it, I don't even. I don't even know. Hang on a second. The clock's over here. And 9:29. Okay, we'll keep going for at least another hour. Damn it, we're only 3 minutes in, and it's already been like an hour. Okay, moving on.
Can't help but talk about it because everything else just seems like a distraction. And such is, of course, the nature of knowing the truth, going down the rabbit hole. Like you can never see things the same way.
Yeah, yeah, that's standard conspiracy theory horseshit. What you just said right there. Right. How many times have you heard that? I don't know if you guys have ever listened to people like Alex Jones or something like that, but they always sort of use this same kind of language, do your own research, go down the rabbit hole, and it's like this feeling like this idea that you're part of the elite, that you have the super secret knowledge that nobody else has, right? And you're special for this, you know. And if people would only just listen to what you say, the world would be a perfect place, right? And all you got to do is just, send me 5.95 and buy my book and like give me money on Patreon, right? Seriously, that's what it is. That's what it is, dude. He's fucking like he's trying to build a flock right here. He's trying to build a congregation, you know. So yeah, I bet you this dude is like has long-term goals of creating his own ministry eventually. All right, moving on.
And lots of people would prefer to live in the state of like blissful ignorance, which is understandable, but no one can honestly return to that state once they see the truth. And so in the last video, we discussed the
Yes.
links between liberalism and Satanism.
More
And
than
this is
meaningless
actually
bullshit.
technically part 4 of this series, the final part, because we had 2 prerequisite videos that explain concepts that we built off in other videos. And so I'll put links to all of the other videos in the series in the
Might
description,
have to
plus a
go
little
back
video
and
called How
watch
We
the
Let the
rest of those
2010s Change
videos.
Politics Forever, which explains the contrast between Christian morality and what is being promoted throughout society by the left. But in this video, we're going to cover so many important things. And so please watch all the way through, even if you disagree. So at least it can be a fair disagreement. But I think that
Some
you'll
of
be
those
with me on
videos
at least
sound
a few of these
interesting.
points, even if you disagree with.
We might have to go back and watch some of those. I very much would like to think what he thinks the left is imposing on everybody. It's probably, some idiot woke scold bullshit where he like, is gonna like, I don't know, complain because, Marvel movies have women in them now or something like that. Most likely something to do with that. Anyway, let's let the man speak though.
The thesis of this video, which I guess I'll say now, is that if there is to be conservatism, meaning the conservation of the traditional American society, then there has to be Christianity. They are inextricably linked. You cannot have America without conservatism, and you cannot have conservatism without Christianity simply because America was built by Christianity. If you
Yeah, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Okay. Conservatism is a political ideology, and it very much can exist independent of a religion. And it kind of did for a very long time, right? Because if I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you're all aware that the Democrats used to be the conservative party back in the day, right? Republicans used to be the progressive party, roughly about 70 to 80 years ago, you know. It was the Republicans, right? And back then, there really weren't, there wasn't an organized conservative Christian right in this country, right? Religious groups, Christian groups tended to stay out of politics in the early 20th century. That, not to say that you never got, like they used to call them blue noses, because there definitely were, you know, um, religious people that ran for office and shit like that, and those sort of like conservative citizen groups and stuff like that. That definitely was a thing. In fact, we actually did some streams on those about fascist movements in the early 20th century. I have a couple streams about those guys, silver shirts, that kind of thing, right? So that definitely was a thing, you know. And you had these sort of back in the turn of the century up until like the 30s and 40s. You had these people that would do things like they would try to outlaw jazz music, shit like that, and they used to call them blue noses, right? The language is very similar to today when you have conservative Democrats. They call them blue dog Democrats. Same kind of thing. That's sort of where this comes from. Blue nose preachers is what they used to call them. And these were the people that would like, basically try to inject religion into politics. So it's definitely a thing, but still back then there really wasn't this sort of like political force like the conservative Christians were not really a political force back then. Christians tended to be a lot more progressive than they are today, right? The phenomenon of like the right wing conservative Christian is really only kind of came um, around the 1960s or so. That is when in relation to politics, they only really became a voting bloc right around that time, right? Mainly in response to civil rights. So this is true. So what he's saying here that conservatives can't exist without Christianity, that's bullshit. That has nothing to do, I mean, there were conservatives who were very much secular for a very, large portion of the 20th century and even before that. So once again, kind of demonstrates that, like a lot of actual dominionists, they're very picky choosy about what kind of history they choose to believe and are not above misrepresenting facts and straight out lying to people if it supports their political agenda. People, when they say, "What would Jesus do?" Would Jesus make things up and lie in order to spread his ministry there? I don't think so. I hope, I hope for his sake, God isn't real, or else he's going to hell. Anyway, moving on.
If you try to run this system without Christianity, you are setting yourself up for failure. And so now we will explain why Christian philosophy is the opposite of leftist philosophy and why they'll always be at odds with each other, why the Constitution.
That's interesting. That's very interesting, he would say that. Because, Christians in the Bible, I don't know if you guys have ever read the Bible, right? They are very much somewhat seem to be in support of less leftist ideology in the Bible. This is definitely true. You are, especially, well, when you say leftist, what the typical American progressive believes, right? That's a lot different than what this guy thinks leftism. If you were to ask this dude here, John Doyle, what leftism is, he'd probably say communism. I mean, look at his fucking like set here. He's got like a big sign that says "heck off, commie," and he's got like this fucking stupid thing here with a guy that says "commie tears," and that seems to be his catchphrase. HOC, heck off, commie. Right, which is fucking dumb. Just say the F word, you idiot. Just say fuck off, commie. Nobody cares. Sound like a goddamn moron. Anyway, but if you were to ask the typical American leftist what leftism means, you would probably get a very wide, you know, um, assortment of answers, right? But among those answers, you would probably get things like support for social programs would be high up on that, right? I don't think there's very many people who are actual communists in the United States who, you know, want the workers to like seize the means of production, for example. I don't think you wouldn't see that even, maybe in the most hardcore of circles in this country. Yeah, maybe. Right. But the typical person who votes liberal or progressive in the United States doesn't actually want that. You know, most of us want a system very similar to what's in Northern Europe, right? That kind of, you know, social democracy, right? Where there's a mix of, you know, like the most of the economy is based on private ownership. But certain sectors of the economy are nationalized, things like medicine, for example, right? Things like, you know, let's say prisons, for example. There's no private prisons, right? Free healthcare, right? Or rather, healthcare provided to people at extremely low costs, that kind of thing, right? Education, nationalized education, right? So that there's guarantee of access, and maybe not so much guarantee of outcome, but at least guarantee of access, right? And it seems like most of the countries on Earth that actually go that route, that actually have things like, say, um, socialized medicine, socialized healthcare, that sort of thing, right? Extensive social safety nets, right, to prevent people from ending up homeless, that kind of thing. Most of the countries that have those policies have a much better quality of life for their citizens than we have in the United States. There is, for example, in Northern Europe, an excess of college degrees, right? Too many people with college degrees, so that unskilled labor is in high demand there. And people who do manual labor, for example, are able to get much higher wages, right? This is why somebody in Finland, for example, that works at McDonald's gets the equivalent of $23 an hour, right? And is able to make a living wage, and is able to work at one job and actually afford all of the shit that they need to pay for, their housing, their medicine, all blah 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 blah, because they don't have things like medical bills because the state takes care of it, and the quality of life is much higher. Everybody's much happier. There's less crime, right? Yeah, taxes are higher, but you get what you pay for, right? If you were to ask your typical American leftist what they want, they would say they want something close to that. Very few of us would say something like, no, I want a system closer to, say, the Soviet Union or China, or some other kind of um, abstract communist system that's never been tried or whatever. Very few of us would actually say something like that, right? But this guy has no clue. To him, it's just all communism. Everything that isn't like 100%, you know, capitalist, um, right? Free market capitalism or whatever, as ordained by God, according to him, or people like him. I don't want to put words into his mouth. That's obviously like a commie plot invented by Satan. I don't know. Kind of bullshit. Moving on.
Constitution seemingly failed, why the Second Amendment seemingly failed, the truth about liberal
Why the Second Amendment seemingly failed? All right, first off, I'm starting to I'm gonna kick you Russians out of here, dude. Sorry, I don't know what this shit is. I don't know why you people are here, but I'm removing this shit. I get the feeling that they're just bots or something. So bye bye. Sorry, my Russian friends. So anyway, moving on. What is he talking about? Why the Second Amendment failed? That's a new one to me. Why would he say that exactly? Does he mean that the Second Amendment was supposed to protect the country from what he thinks are communists and socialists? Is that it? That's a new one. I can't wait for that explanation.
Christianity, how liberal democracy hides its tyranny and maintains its power, how religion is inevitable, how the
How liberal democracy hides its tyranny and maintains its power. Okay, okay, let's let the man speak. I don't want to put words into his mouth. This obviously sounds like it's going to be bullshit, but let's see what he says.
the immaterial was transformed into the material to allow for evil, why Christian virtue is absolutely necessary for young men to successfully take their country back, how we're all going to die, how to prepare for that part, including the part where I give you a free book if you want it. So this is also important, so
Yep.
do stay tuned.
Throw that part in there, including the part where I give you a free book if you want it. So he's sort of part like evangelizing here, and part recruiting people to no doubt into his ministry. Okay. Very interesting, very interesting. Let's see. Let's fast forward this bullshit. I don't know what this fucking thing with this truck is. Let's get past that.
You all had a fantastic Thanksgiving, and we are now going to get into some very important topics that I think will answer a lot of questions that we've all had in the backs of our minds, but that we didn't really think to ask or quite know how to articulate, especially in terms of the Constitution
Yeah,
and the
okay, get
Second
on with it,
Amendment. Because
please.
as I've gotten older and I've thought about things more, it's been very difficult for me to buy into this conservative tendency to sort of, idolize the Constitution and the Second Amendment. Oh, well, the problem is we just didn't listen to the Constitution. Well, the Second Amendment is the only reason we'll never have a tyrannical government. Like, I promise you, I promise.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Conservatives and Christians and all those people most definitely idealize the Constitution and the Second Amendment. You could almost say it's like idol worship, right? You know, very much so, right? The same way that Christians idolize the Bible, you know. This is a point that Aaron Ra makes a lot. I don't know if you guys ever watch Aaron Ra. He's like this sort of evolution, like science advocate. You know, he's got his start making atheist videos and debunking creationism and stuff like that. And now he seems to be like sort of a general science advocate, yeah, especially when it comes to like evolution and stuff like that. That's a point that he brings up a lot. The point that conservative Christians don't actually worship Jesus, they instead worship a book, and that book is the Bible, right? And yeah, I could definitely agree. It seems I do agree with that. That people, Second Amendment people, conservatives and stuff like that, they tend to worship the Second Amendment. They tend to worship the Constitution. Too bad they don't actually follow the Constitution. You know, they worship it in the same way they worship the Bible, which is they have a preconceived idea of what it actually says, but they don't actually follow what's actually in the book, the same way they don't follow what's in the Constitution. So, well, that thank you very much, John Doyle. You know, you educated me here. Thank you.
Promise you that you can't provide to me an objection that I haven't already thought of. And I would urge you instead to consider how honestly you can still say these things after the last 2 or so years of the American experience. And when we talk momentarily,
Why is this? See, this is what I don't get. This is what I don't get. Why is this such a bad thing? You know, I don't understand like why so this is like the third like picture this guy has shown of like kids with masks on, right? Obviously implying that this is somehow unjust, right? But what's really going on? Why are these kids wearing why are they actually wearing the masks? They're wearing the mask because there's a deadly disease which is killing children. Okay. Now, when people say, oh, it only doesn't kill that many children, blah, 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 yeah, it kills old people, it kills people who are obese and smokers, shit like that, but it also kills children, right? And a lot of children out there are immunocompromised for one reason or another. You know, children also can get sick, they also have genetic diseases, they also can get cancer, stuff like that. So there are children which are in the high risk group, you know, some of them who might even not even know that they're in the risk group because they have a disease which, the symptoms aren't bad enough yet. But if they were to get COVID, then that increases the chances of them dying from COVID, right? There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of children in the country which are in that situation, right? It is immoral. Let's not worry because since we're talking about religion and government here, let's just take it from a religious standpoint. It is immoral to not enforce some kind of precaution, right? To not enforce precautionary measures against this pandemic in schools. That it's just wrong. If you did nothing, that will, if you don't do anything, if you don't put mask mandates, right? If you don't do stay at home, like learn from home kind of orders where like kids can learn over Zoom, whatever. If you don't socially distance, if you don't cut the number of kids in a classroom in order to take steps to stop this pandemic from spreading, that will directly result in children dying. let alone their parents, who the kids could spread the disease to. And, they themselves may not get it, but their parents might. So the kid might end up a fucking orphan or something like that. But the children themselves are also at risk. That is immoral. So what he's basically saying here, kids that should not be wearing masks when they're in school, you know, you can't take the moral high ground here, because if you're advocating for children to not wear masks, to not get vaccinated when they're old enough, if you're not advocating for those things, then the result of your actions that you're advocating for would be death. The death of the very same children that you're trying, that you're claiming you're protecting their rights. I mean, you don't have the right to spread a deadly disease. You just simply don't, right? It's bullshit. And I don't understand that. I don't understand how that got politicized, right? How did a fucking disease get politicized? How? Whose idea was that? You know, somebody out there in the Republican like fucking war room, some smoky room somewhere, right, with Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and whoever the fuck else makes up like whatever bullshit agenda the fucking GOP and the conservatives are going to spout this week, sat down and said, "Hey, we can get voters to vote for us if we encourage them to not get vaccinated and die." Somebody sat down and went with that. And I don't know who it was, but whoever that person was is going to hell. If you're a Christian, John Doyle, and you believe in hell, then people that are, advocating for children to die will definitely be going there. Anyway, maybe I'm not supposed to understand. Moving on.
About the actual nature of how our government maintains power and the Constitution and the Second Amendment, I think that you'll find that discussion to be much more satisfying than the same tired excuses that we've heard from the bumper sticker crowd. But anyways, given that this country was built by Christian men, to which of course the objection is always going to be, well, this guy had an affair. Well, this guy did a bad thing. Yeah.
No, the objection is that they weren't the same Christians that you are. Right. They were Christians. Yes, they were. But as we said, they were deists. They were not the same type of Christian as you. What would you say, John Doyle, if the founding fathers did put a provision in there, a religious test, and said, hey, if you want to be in the United States, if you want to be a United States citizen, you have to be a deist? Would you agree with that? Right? Would you say that that was just? Would you say that, you know, this is freedom of religion? Yeah, you have freedom of religion as long as your religion is ours, right? Would you agree with that? Something tells me that John Doyle here would not agree with that, and that he would call that tyranny. But see, it's only tyranny when he's the person who's not dictating the terms. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, but he probably repented for it and at least acknowledged that it was wrong, whereas your faction seeks to usher in evil through the abandonment of the immaterial by you can still say these things after the last 2 or so years of the American experience. And when we talk momentarily about the actual
because he started like flinging monkey poo there, so let's listen to that one more time.
Nature of how our government maintains power and the Constitution and the Second Amendment, I think that you'll find that discussion to be much more satisfying than the same tired excuses that we've heard from the bumper sticker crowd. But anyways, given that this country was built by Christian men, to which of course the objection is always going to be, well, this guy had an affair. Well, this guy did a bad thing. Yeah, but he probably repented for it and at least acknowledged that it was wrong, whereas your faction seeks to usher in evil through the abandonment of the immaterial by publishing articles saying, well, science says there's nothing wrong with casual sex.
What the fuck does that have to do with anything? What did he just... All right, so he just said, let's see, somebody would object to Christian men who built the country because they acted in an immoral way, right? That's what he just said, right? But at least it's okay because they repented and knew it was wrong. Whereas I'm going to say my side, I'm just going to take the opposite side because I am probably exactly what this guy thinks of, the usual secular Satan worshiping atheist, even though I'm not really an atheist. But I'll just take that on for myself. So I'm saying that I want to abandon. Wait, what the fuck did he say? Abandon morality through immaterial. Okay.
Given that this country was built by Christian men, to which of course the objection is always going to be, well, this guy had an affair. Well, this guy did a bad thing. Yeah, but he probably repented for it and at least acknowledged that it was wrong. Whereas your faction seeks to usher in evil through the abandonment of the immaterial by publishing articles saying, well, science says there's nothing wrong with casual.
The abandonment of the immaterial through publishing articles. Okay, what does that have to do with? What does one have to do with the other there? That doesn't make any sense, right? A banishment of the immaterial, claiming God doesn't exist. Okay, that's what he's saying. Through how? How does publishing an article saying that it's okay and healthy to engage in, for adults to engage in sex when they feel like it, how does that abandon God? It doesn't really make any sense. Not really. Like what? Am I rejecting morality? I'm rejecting Christian morality. So I guess that could say that, oh, I guess you could kind of claim that I'm rejecting God by rejecting Christian morality. Is that what he's trying to say? It still doesn't really make a lot of sense. You can have casual sex and still believe in the immaterial, right? You can believe that there are spirits and ghosts and fairies and demons and dragons and unicorns and shit, and like to have casual sex. There's no reason why one of those should not, you know, follow the other, right? You can even be a Christian and engage in casual sex and still believe in his version of God. You can. There really is no commandment that says thou shalt not have casual sex, is there not? Right? Says you shouldn't commit adultery, is what it says, right? And there is no commandment that says you have to be a virgin when you get married. That's not true. That doesn't exist, right? Oh, I'm using the wrong. There we go. Using the wrong thing there, right? That's not a thing, right? Um, there's nothing that says women have to be virgins when they get married in the Bible. Not in the New Testament, Not even really in the Old Testament, is there? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe there might actually be some sort of like law or provision or something that says, if a woman's not a virgin, blah blah blah, trade her for two donkeys and a fucking mule or some shit. I don't really know about that. But it doesn't actually follow. It doesn't actually follow, right? The morality that one adheres to doesn't really have much to do with whether or not one believes in an afterlife or in the immaterial. And you can't destroy the immaterial by engaging in questionable morality. You can't really do that. First off, you have to kind of prove that the immaterial actually exists in order for it to be destroyed, right? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't really make any sense. It's just more bullshit, is what it is. It's more bullshit to kind of like make you think what he's saying has merit. When if you actually try to break it down, if you actually try to think about it, it doesn't make any sense at all. Maybe in some weird, wacky, fucking like fundamentalist, alternate fucking universe sense that maybe I just don't understand it. I don't know. Maybe I'm not intelligent enough to understand what the fuck this guy's talking about. So let's watch some more.
Sex. Well, science says morality is subjective. We're going to dissect this.
Science does not say morality is subjective. Science doesn't say anything about morality, right? Morality is the purview of religion and philosophers, right? Science is interested in dealing with actual provable phenomenon, measurements, right? Things that can be measured, experiments that can be repeated, things that can be codified and explained and utilized, ultimately utilized, right? That's what science is interested in. Science is not interested in is something right or wrong. That is not a thing, right? I mean, is he talking about what? Social scientists? Is he talking about sociologists? Is he talking about, what? What kind of science, you know, what kind of science experiment can determine what is and isn't right? There's nothing of the sort like that out there at all. It's like, is this shit that this guy's just making up? You know? No, not really. This is really what this is. This is just sort of buzzwords that this dude is throwing out there for his friends, Like this is the kind of language that dominionists and like basically fucking preachers use. That's what's going on here. He's basically like using the same kind of like rhetoric that you hear in sermons like on the 700 Club and shit like that, right? Satan runs this world, right? You're a Christian, be a Christian, be in the world but not of the world, that kind of thing, right? It's basically just bullshit, folks. Moving on.
This a little bit later, but in summary, you're stupid. The point being that this country was built by men who were virtually all Christian, with a handful of exceptions, if that. And because of this, Christianity was the dominant religion and had the primary impact on the ethics, the culture, and the politics of this nation. And this calls back.
So, so what? Even if that was true, which it really isn't, not to what he thinks, right? Not to the extent that he believes. But even if it was, so what? So what if it was? What bearing does that have on anybody today in modern America, right? So what if everybody in the 18th century was a Christian? What if every single person who signed the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, what if every single one of them were Christians? What if they were the exact same kind of Christian that John Doyle is? How does that matter? What is it? What bearing does that have on any modern law or how law is applied to anybody nowadays at all whatsoever? Explain that to me. That's what I don't understand here. That's what I don't get. This is what he's not explaining adequately at all. How should anything that we do change if that were true? Please explain that to me. This is what I'm not getting from here. All I'm getting is a bunch of rapid fire bullshit, you know, of a guy making wild claims, not explaining any of the claims that he's putting forth, right? And then just moving on, pretending that he's saying something that's profound when in real life it isn't. And if you were to actually think about any of the shit that he actually says and apply it to, if we were to actually take any of the stuff that this guy's actually saying and apply it in real life, if we were to actually like pass laws that say, okay, you no longer have a freedom of religion, what would that actually mean? Right? He's not explaining that either. That's another thing. He's just sort of leaving it out there for, he's implying what will happen. But, look at his set though, right? Look at his set. He's got soldiers, he's got guns and bayonets in the background, right? I like this. The future is male. The fuck is that? What is this guy, fucking incel too? He's got a Smith and Wesson thing on his laptop. Yeah, the implied, oh, here's another one. I didn't notice that. I didn't notice the black fucking American flag on his arm here. You see this? You see this, a black American flag? You know what that is, right? I know you guys have probably, if you've seen this around, it's basically a black and white American flag like that. It comes from the Civil War. The black American flag basically means take no prisoners, and it was something that the Confederacy would fly when they were communicating the message that they weren't going to take any prisoners and anybody that they caught were going to be executed. That's what that means. So the black American flag basically means we want to kill you. Take no prisoners, right? So, yeah, just a little bit of a threat there, wouldn't you say? you know, kind of, the threat of violence. He's not straight out saying it. He's not straight out saying, "Oh, we'll kill you all in order to enforce our secular fucking, or sorry, our anti-secular fucking America." Right? In order to, like, enforce our religious beliefs on you. He's not straight out saying it, but I don't know, man. The visual cues in his set design can't really be denied. What fucking time is it anyway? 10 o'clock. Okay, we'll go for a little bit longer. Jesus, we're only 6 minutes in. We'll go for a little bit longer.
To the quote from earlier, that those who think that religion and politics aren't linked understand neither. And this is true because what religion is, by definition, is an understanding of how things are. And what politics is, by definition, is an understanding of how things ought to be.
That's not true. That is not what religion is by definition. Religion is not an understanding of how things are. Religion is a belief system, right? Any belief system that necessitates faith over facts is a religion, right? Because if it didn't require faith, it wouldn't be a religion. It would be science. Okay. If there was actual facts involved in the Bible, in Christianity, if we knew, for example, if we all knew that Jesus Christ was actually real, for example, and that God was real and Jesus actually lived, and all of the things that you read about in the Bible actually happened, the loaves and the fishes, the walking on water, the curing the blind, raising Lazarus from the dead, all that shit, parting of the Red Sea, and all of the different miracles, Mount Sinai, and all that. If we knew for a fact that all that stuff was real, right, there would be no church. There would be, because everybody would be a believer, because it wouldn't be taken on faith. It would be called at that point fact, right? And being a priest wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be a religion. It would just be like an administrator, right? You know, that's not, so it's like, no, religion is not the study of how things are, right? The understanding of how things are. They're the understanding of, religion is basically like beliefs, a belief system predicated on faith, right? Politics, on the other hand, are basically people who want to, how a country is run. Not, it's not a study on how things ought to be. That doesn't make any sense either. That's No, it's how you rule a country, right? That's what politics actually is. Laws and how they're formed and enforced and who actually runs the show. So, yeah, that's kind of complete and total bullshit. That's another thing that he said to try to make himself sound smart when in real life it doesn't make any sense when you examine it. Moving on. Seem to be running into a lot of that here. Hmm.
And if you understand how things are, then you necessarily understand how things ought to be because your understanding of how things are informs that. This is why anyone who claims to be a
That sounds like something he read off a fucking Cracker Jack box right there. That sounds like something that came out of like Uncle John's bathroom reader, right? Or like off the back of like a fucking like fortune cookie or some shit right there. That's wow. Wow, okay. Okay. I bet you he probably thought that up himself too. He probably thought that was very clever. Oh my God. Wow. See, that's the other thing we got to remember, folks, right? These guys aren't that bright, you know? They really aren't. People like, especially the religious guys, like you might get somebody like Ben Shapiro or whatever, and what did he go to fucking Harvard or some shit like that, right? Ben Shapiro's obviously smart, or Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is obviously smart. He's a professor or whatever. Even though, like, when they are asked to back up the things they believe, they falter and all that shit too. And the reason why those guys end up making fools of themselves when they try to debate people is because they haven't actually taken the time to actually think about the actual reasons why they believe the things they believe and how they can back it up. And this is why there's so many videos of Jordan Peterson, for example, tripping himself up and not being able to like properly explain his political positions and how they match up with like, the shit that he says that he supports. Right? That's why you see stuff like that, right? The religious guys come from a predetermined endpoint and work their way backwards, right? Sort of like when you get a belief in creationism, it's the same kind of mental gymnastics, right? They work from the conclusion God made it, and then they try to make the available evidence fit their conclusion. And this dude is doing the exact same thing. His conclusion is, you know, the country was built for and by Christians, and thus only belongs to and applies to Christians. The laws only apply to Christians. That's his conclusion, and now he's got to work backwards from it, but he doesn't really have very much to back up his assumption in the first place. And that's why he's filling his lecture with stupid bullshit like like what he just said. Stupid meaningless bullshit that has no meaning. It's like that's like a fucking that seriously sounds like something a fucking child would think up. I don't know. Stupid as hell. Moving on.
A Christian and who says things like, well, I don't let my religion inform my political beliefs is misguided because what they're basically doing is masturbating to this idea of the comfortable, unbiased, secular society and their allegiance to that above their allegiance to their literal creator, which is a form of pride, which of course is a sin.
Hmm. So, not allowing your religion to dictate your politics is masturbation and is, of course, sin. How? How? It doesn't make any sense. So, something can be said because there are millions of Christians out there, right? Because, I don't want to come off like I'm anti Christian. I'm not anti Christian, right? I am anti asshole Christians like this dude, right? The Christians I don't like are the Christians who try to use their religion and force it on everybody else and are end up becoming giant hypocrites in the process. Those are the Christians that I don't like, right? But there are millions upon millions of Christians out there who believe in their religion and keep it separate from their political life, right? There are millions of Christians out there who are anti-racists, for example, you know, millions of them. In fact, the Civil Rights Act never really would have got off the ground. The civil rights movement in the 1960s was led by Christians. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., preacher, right? Very much involved in that. The anti-slavery movements in the 19th century, very much led by Christians at the time. Of course, there were also other Christians on the other side who were trying to preserve the institution of slavery, which kind of shows that it can go both ways. Hey, Lewis the Hedgehog, you're back. Who are these Russian people? Are you guys like I say something in English? I think they're bots, aren't they? Let's remove that. I don't know why these fucking Russians are posting in my thing. Where are all these fucking bots coming from? Anyway, moving on. So yeah, there are millions of Christians out there who balance their beliefs and take the positive beliefs, right? The positive things from Christianity and into their lives. Things like goodwill towards other men and giving to charity and standing up against hate speech and feeding the poor and the hungry, right? And immigrants, rights for the poor and the downtrodden, and they work to bring things like refugees from war-torn countries into the United States and to find children homes and stuff like that. There are millions of Christians out there that do work like that, and they should be commended, right? So yeah, that's why I want to say it's like, I talk a lot of shit about Christians. I don't mean every single Christian. I mean people like fucking John Doyle. Those are the people that I don't like. And you know what the thing is, if you're an actual Christian, you probably don't like him either. You know, if you actually believe in the real deal, if you actually believe that there's a God with a plan for you who just wants you to believe in him and treat everybody the way you want to be treated, then you see people like this son of a, this fucking parasite, using your religion to manipulate people to make money, because that's what he's actually doing. I think it would make me a little angry if I were a true believer. Might also get me to reject some of this shit, maybe. Don't you think? I don't know. I make it. There's no secret. The reason why I don't really truly believe any of this stuff is partially because people like this, you know, kind of turned me off of it in the beginning. I mean, I've kind of moved past that since then. That's just my own personal belief, though. Moving on.
They refuse to sacrifice their public perception by taking the unpopular but still correct approach by acknowledging that religious beliefs and political beliefs are necessarily intertwined. And
Uh, you say it's correct. That's not necessarily true. You know, there are plenty of things that your religion teaches, for example, that would not be a very good thing if we were to encode them into secular law. You know, stoning your disobedient children, for example, that's something that the Bible teaches, right? The Bible says that's okay. Slavery is a thing the Bible says is okay, right? I'm sure that this dude would have plenty of arguments against that. Problem is that he's wrong. Bible definitely does say slavery is a good thing. Even Jesus Christ himself says slavery is a good thing. Right. Jesus Christ himself says that certain people should be put to death. Witches, for example, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. That is from the voice of Jesus Christ. That's actually words from the mouth of Jesus Christ. If you believe that Jesus actually was real and that the Bible actually is his testament, then you must believe that Jesus says that you're supposed to kill witches, right? Another thing that Jesus actually says is that he came only for the children of Israel. That's actually another thing that's in the Bible that, you know, Christian Dominionists like to ignore, right? That Jesus himself said, hey, if you're not Jewish, then I'm not here to redeem you. Funny how they forget that part, huh? It's all bullshit, folks. It's all bullshit. It's all cherry picking bullshit. Moving on.
they instead opt to maintain this farce of impartiality because they think it makes them appear smarter, more educated, more just, more balanced, or whatever. My case was somewhat unique. My politics actually came first, and then I realized that Christianity was identical to my
No shit. Really? Your politics came first? Yeah, okay. I believe that. Yeah, right. That makes perfect fucking sense. Makes perfect sense that this guy would be an insane right winger, right wing, incel type, right? And then he found religion. Yeah, right. That just, you know what that just says to me? That just has grifter written all over it, is what that says. I don't know. Maybe he actually did have a spiritual experience, but somehow I think he had a fucking monetary experience where he realized he could make a shitload of money if he suddenly, like, found God. But I don't want to put words in the man's mouth. Just seems a little sus to me. Moving on.
moral compass. And then I read in the Bible that God inscribes morality onto all of our hearts. And I was like, oh, that's how that happened. Like, I always just strongly detested degenerate behavior, just instinctively. I am instinctively based because my parents never really sat.
Degenerate behavior. Man. Wow. I, I don't understand. Man, I'm just getting like some serious sort of like alt-right vibes off of this guy. Are you? I definitely am. I'm definitely getting like some serious. I mean, God, he's using all the language. Commie, degenerate, stuff like that. This is all like alt-right shit, you know. Uh, I don't know, man. Kind of sounds like this dude was like, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, hanging out in 4chan, posting frog memes and harassing Anita Sarkeesian or something. Right. Kind of sounds like it to me. Anyway, moving on.
Sat me down and said, don't do this, don't do that. The schools kind of just stood back while these things were happening, or they enabled them indirectly. It was always just a very strong instinct that I had that I could not explain before I read the Bible. And something else to keep in mind is that the left does not separate their politics and their religion. Like their religion, they'll make
That's bullshit. That is 100% bullshit. The left very much separates religion and politics. Of course, what he means by religion, of course, actually is progressivism. So, in that sense, no, right? But, he's just wrong about that. Anyway,
maybe not as official as Christianity, 100% informs their politics, and it always will. So, what's the religion of the left, so to speak? Even the people on the left who claim to be Christians would actually find themselves more closely aligned with this than with a proper understanding of Christianity. And this, broadly speaking, is something called humanism, which is the idea that man has
that's what
supreme
I want.
authority rather than nature or God. And the
That's what I want. See, I was trying to find this smudge tool here. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, humanism. Humanism is the official religion of the left, huh? All right, well, let's see about that. Oh, wow. Why is that so high? This should be more around there. Okay. That's bullshit, by the way. Humanism is actually not a religion. Humanism is a philosophy, but let's hear what he has to say here.
progression of mankind is the ultimate purpose of all human action. And this is important because the political manifestation of humanism is simply socialism, because humanism, as a rejection of nature and an elevation of man, seeks to eliminate any form of inequality between people. So think about it this
Any form of inequality? Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't really know off the top of my head the actual textbook definition for humanism, but that sounds like that would be a good thing to go for, wouldn't you say? I mean, wouldn't you like to live in a world where people actually were equal, you know? Where people actually did have let's make that a little less there, right? Why is that so strong? Jeez. Okay, see something's definitely wrong here. See how this is smudging way too much. I'm trying to just smudge it a little bit and it's like smudging a shitload. Why is it smudging so much? Maybe I just need to like take off the pressure enable pens. Take that off. How come I can't remove that? Weird. See, programs like this have a pretty big like learning curve. Oh wow. I completely fucked that whole thing up. Okay. Let's just remove that completely. Let's just take the strength down to like 13%. See if that even makes a difference. But yeah, like I don't know. They definitely have, you know, I don't know. Let's go back. But back to what we were talking about. What the fuck is he saying? Yeah, okay. Humanism seeks to, what did he say? Eliminate, or eliminate discrimination against people, right? Make everybody equal. Seems to me like that would be a great thing to actually have, wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you like to live in a society where people actually were equal? I mean, seems like something that would be good, right? If everything actually was driven by merits and not by any other, discrimination, sexism, racism, anything like that. If, for example, people actually had the same kind of access to things like education, you know, um, or good jobs, or healthcare, right? It seems like the world would be a lot more just if that was actually allowed, right? If that was actually how our society really worked. If somebody, based on their merits alone, right, where it was able to succeed in the country based on their merits alone. Seems like that would be what you would want, right? You'd have the best possible outcomes, right? Seems like a lot of our problems that we have in our country are actually due to the fact that this is not how our society is set up. Wouldn't you agree to that? I mean, we got people like, for example, Donald Trump, who have were born with immense amounts of wealth, right? Who are able to use their wealth and power in order to unfairly get access to things that the rest of us can't have, you know. For example, do you think Donald Trump would ever have become president if he wasn't super rich and a celebrity? Hell no. All right. Do you think Donald Trump, for example, if he had to just get a job like everybody else, do you think that he would actually like do well in his job and be able to earn the kind of wealth that he had? Remember Donald Trump was born like with like more wealth than any of us will ever even be in close proximity with, right? Like the minute when he was a zygote, he was richer than you were. You know, when he was a fetus, he had more money than I'll ever earn in my entire life, right? Don't you think that that a world where that kind of like inequality wasn't a thing is preferable to what we have now, right? Where you don't have like madmen and like narcissists and shit running around like basically fucking destroying like the environment, in order to just like, I don't know, cater to their own fucking selfish whims, right? You don't have people like Jeff Bezos making like, more money than like 99% of the entire world put together so that he can like go build fucking rockets and fly up into space for 15 minutes while the average Amazon worker like isn't allowed to take like, pee breaks whenever they want to. Seems a little wrong. Seems like a lot of our problems in this world would be addressed if we just had a little more equality, right? Equality is antithetical to the Christian Dominionist worldview. The last thing somebody like John Doyle wants is actual equality, right? Christians have, a very, very black and white worldview. There's us and them. We are the good guys. They are the bad guys. We are going to heaven. They are not, right? It's necessary for in order for there to be a heaven, in order for heaven to actually mean something, it's necessary that other people have to go to hell. Right. That's definitely a thing. That's part of the worldview, right? So to actually like have true equality would basically destroy what this guy believes in. So it's very funny that he would bring that up, that he would say, "Oh yeah, equality is a bad thing." Yeah. If things were actually equal, that just basically means he doesn't get to be in charge. That's another thing there, just a little bit of that little bit of Christian fascism going in there too. Jeannie B, hey, what's going on? How you doing? Thanks for joining. Geez, let's go on for a little bit longer and then I gotta end this because it's getting tired and tomorrow I gotta get up early. So maybe another 10, 15 minutes.
This way. God created human beings and God created nature. God is at the top of the hierarchy above human beings, and the nature which God created has certain people better at certain things, man different from woman, etc.
That's exactly what I just said, didn't it? Isn't that funny? See, I haven't even watched this. I haven't watched this far. And it's funny how I just spent like the last 10 minutes like saying some shit that immediately he just repeats exactly what I said. It's almost like, hey, it's almost like this dude doesn't have an original thought in his entire empty ass fucking head. And he's just repeating the exact same shit every other insane Christian Dominionist fuckwit says. Ah, man.
etc. Therefore, Christianity and the worship of God, conservatism, true meritocracy, true freedom, order, masculinity, these are all things that are right wing. All of these things are related, they are all intertwined, and they are all necessary for the societal propagation of each other. And the
For the societal propagation of each other. They're all true, they're all necessary. So you can't, okay, so you can't have Christianity without masculinity, and you can't have this without right-wing politics. Bullshit, complete total bullshit. These are all things that exist independent of each other. You know, there are masculine people who don't believe in conservatism. You know, there are such things as people who are liberal and progressive who are also masculine. And there are even, people that are maybe a little bit too masculine, a little, misogynist, right? On the left. That very much is a thing too, you know. And there are also Christians who are on the left. There are also conservatives who are not raging, misogynists as well. So no, this is what this guy is doing right here. This is called, it's a logical fallacy called Jonanism, right? And I forget where it comes from exactly, um, but it's the idea that everyone that is my enemy is exactly the same. That's what Jonanism is. This idea that, and conversely, everyone who's my friend is also the same as well. So it's when you assume that since, one person is like opposed to you, then they're the same as all the other people who are opposed to you. And all the people that are not opposed to you are within the same camp as well, right? That's what he's doing here, and this is why he's saying things like Satanism and atheism and progressivism are all the same thing. They're all religions propped up by the state or whatever. Because to him, it is. Because he's got a very black and white worldview where you're not with us, you're against us, right? And it's all just different flavors of the same thing to this guy. Because he really hasn't actually thought through any of this stuff. Right. He hasn't really taken the time to actually examine what any of this is. I bet you $1 million this dude doesn't even really know what communism is. I bet you $1 million. He's got all this anti-commie shit all over his set. Heck off commie and then commie tears and all this other crap. I bet if you were to sit down with him and start talking to him about Marx and Engels and all of that, he'd have no fucking clue because he probably doesn't know because he probably thinks like every other stupid ass like conservative moron who gets their fucking like politics off of Facebook think that it's like I don't know, some shit that has to do with AOC or something. Right? He probably thinks communism is cancel culture or some shit. Seriously. I really wouldn't doubt it. you know we'll have to go through some of his videos. I actually want to see the rest of his videos now because he's saying that this is part 4 of a series. And I know, you know what? We spent 2 hours here, 2 hours talking about this guy, and we're only at 9 minutes in, right? And it's because, like I said, folks, it's this style, this sort of um, gish gallopy, throw everything at the fucking wall style until some shit sticks, right? Confuse your enemy kind of style of debate here. You know, it lends itself to this sort of like, kind of empty rhetoric that this dude spouts, right? That's what it is. That's his style of speaking, where he just fucking like rapid fires like 5,000 fucking things at you all at once and doesn't give you any time to actually think about any of it, right? And he says it really fast and it makes it really sound like he's really super intelligent. And at home, you're just sort of like, oh, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. Look how fast he's talking, you know? But if you sit down, if you pause it and you look at it and you examine any of it, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. Just like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro does the exact same fucking thing. Ben Shapiro is also a giant moron. Anyway, I think that's enough of this asshole for today. Maybe we'll continue some more, you know. Maybe we'll go on a little bit more with this guy because, I kind of like him. I kind of like him, and I don't want to, people to think that I'm picking on Christians and stuff like that. I am picking on this guy because what he's saying is a load of fucking bullshit. And I think it's very important. Let's turn this fucking shit off before like I vomit here. I think it's very important for us to explore what people like this guy have to say because they're dangerous. This dude is dangerous, right? If this guy or someone that believes in the same bullshit that he believes in were to actually get into power, it's bad news for us, right? And Christian Dominionism is a very big thing. I mean, I made an entire live stream on Christian Dominionism, 2 hours, where I talked all about it a few months back. I'll put a link to it down in the after the video publishes. I'll put a link to it if you guys didn't catch that stream. But I did a very long 2 hour live stream where I went into the history of Christian Dominionism, where it came from, what they believe. Um, People like this, they don't believe, they believe that the Constitution only applies to Christians, right? And, if he were to get into power, non Christians would have no rights at all. You know, non Christians wouldn't get to vote, right? Biblical law would be enacted instead of secular law. So you'd have shit like, um, people getting stoned to death because they were adulterers or something like that, right? I don't know how the banking system would work because, Christians are not supposed to actually charge, they're not supposed to charge interest. Maybe that might be a good thing, right? People would get stoned to death for working on the Sabbath. But of course, the Sabbath is actually on Saturday, not on Sunday. So anybody that works on a Saturday would actually be stoned to death. Anybody who worshiped on Sunday would actually also be, you know, subject to biblical, execution by getting hit in the face with really huge giant rocks. Of course, they forget that fucking part, because they're really just picking and choosing the parts of the Bible they want to believe and not the actual, not what it actually says, but that's besides the point, right? Um, and it just seems like, and when he said here, oh, my politics came first and then my religion, I find that 100% believable because a lot of conservatives, a lot of libertarians, a lot of people on the far right fringe tend to support things like dominionism. This is where they all come from. So I find that very believable. But anyway, yeah, this shit is dangerous. Getting back to that, this shit is dangerous, and we definitely need to talk about it because it's sort of, you know, on the rise a little bit. You know. Anyway, folks, it's late. I gotta end this. Thank you all for joining me again. I know not that many people came, but that's okay because I'm streaming at, late at night on a Wednesday when I usually do it on Saturday. That's cool. I do want to kind of like break the streams up during the week as well because I do it every Saturday, but I think that's not enough. I think we maybe need to start streaming maybe twice a week now. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll start doing it Wednesday and Saturdays. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, guys, got to get going here. Before I leave, let me just do my ending speech and stuff. But here, let's see where we're at. Let's see. Go back to this size. Yeah, it looks okay. Right? Let me make that a little bit bigger. Looks all right, wouldn't you say? I think I'm getting used to this program here. Of course, Photoshop is always better. Maybe I might just bite the bullet and actually get Photoshop. But I don't know. Started getting used to this program. It seems to be taking a little longer to do stuff that in Photoshop I could just bust out like that, but who knows? Um, let's see here. But before we get going, if you like what I do and you want to support me, I do have an Etsy shop. Let's see. This is my Etsy shop here. Let's go here. Okay, if you like what I do and you want to see more, you can, and you want to give me money for doing what I do, You can buy something from my Etsy shop. There's the link down there. I make prints and stuff like that. You know, very popular. I've been actually like making a lot of money over Christmas. Christmas is always great for me on Etsy. I made like a shitload of cash this Christmas. So anyway, but yeah, this is where all of the stuff that we draw in the streams, like we did this during the stream here, this piece. This is one that we live streamed creating this. So if you like what I do and you want to support me, monetarily, please consider buying something. If you want to see more of my artwork, I have a Deviant Art gallery up here. Here's the link to that. I got my comics up here. This is my conspiracy theorist. This is going to be a series of streams that I'm writing that we're going to do about conspiracy theories. That is a total untapped well of potential. Let's see. I have those two. I also have a God, what the fuck is my other? I think I have an Instagram. Don't I have an Instagram? I think I do. It's yeah, I have an Instagram. It's this Dirty Kitchen Press on Instagram. So if you want to see, I do post stuff on Instagram. Usually I post sketches and things like that. Like oh wait, it's wow, I can't even like open that without logging in. Well, fuck that. But anyway, this is like stuff that I like did at cons and that kind of thing. So check me out on Instagram there. I also have another UCD videos. I actually also have another website, YouTube channel. Right. It's UCD. There it is. Wait, is that going to start playing that? Nope, don't play it. Hang on a second, guys. I just have to navigate to this. I'm using a new computer, so I don't have all the shit saved. This is my other YouTube channel where I do mainly things like toy reviews, video game reviews, stuff like that. So if you see me talking about stuff that is not politically oriented, then you can check me out on UCD videos. And then I also have a Patreon, but I don't think the Patreon is actually active at this moment. I don't know, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, I do have a Patreon. I'll put the link down in the thing. But anyway, if you support me and you like what I do and blah blah blah. Oh yeah, I have a web comic too. Right. Can't forget ja.com. Fun for the whole stupid family. This is my web comic. There's ninjas and stuff in it. Right. People getting punched in the face and monsters and people getting their heads chopped off, that kind of thing. That's my webcomic. So please check me out at hawanja.com if you want to see my webcomic. Anyway, folks, that's the stuff that I do, and I really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Jeannie B. Great to see you. Thanks, Luz the Hedgehog. Thank you, Dynacat, great to see you as always. And all you Russian bots that were in the chat this time, I think you were all bots, but in case you weren't bots, sorry for deleting you guys. Anyway, guys, I got to get going here, but we'll do this again Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I think we're going to actually go back to our alt-right series on Saturday. Should have it ready by then. So I will see you all then. Adios, guys.